Hi there, I'm Dr. Mary Travelbest, and I was recently on a 90-day journey around the world, and I'm excited to connect with fellow travelers and share our experiences. Today's listener story spotlight is about a 79-year-old Sandi Biback, who I met in Toronto. She helped organize an afternoon with women from JourneyWoman. It's an organization that she was called in to help, and she rose to the occasion. She's traveling to Bhutan in October, and she told me several of the tips she had for purchasing travel insurance. She has been an active traveler for many decades, and I tip my hat to you, Sandi, and thank you for helping out in Toronto. And now a quick fire FAQ. This is about single supplements. These are extra fees that are basically doubled when you're on a package group tour. Check the notes for more information on this, and I'm going to talk about when do I want to pay for them or not. You can also find a link here. There'll be many times when you do pay extra being solo, but this practice is getting attention with cruise ship businesses, and the more successful ones are eliminating the fees or reducing them dramatically. On my 90-day around the world trip, I had to pay for a whole room. I was on a cruise from Helsinki to Stockholm. It was just for one night. It was a tiny room on one of the lower berths with no window. I'll address this issue again in future episodes, but I'd like to hear from you on this topic too. So here's for you a 60-second confidence challenge. Find a world map, whether it's a flat map or a round map or an atlas. Just get one and explore the map as if you lived in this world. You do. I challenge you to know your geography just a little bit better than you did yesterday. Now, if you liked today's confidence challenge, and I hope you did, chapter 3 of my book on 5 steps for solo travel, that's book A, you can find out information about this special challenge of geography. Okay, let's move on to a destination deep dive, and I'm going to talk about my 90-day trip. This is part 2. We left off in part 1 with my visit to South Africa, specifically Johannesburg. Let's move forward now to the second half. I flew on the shortest day of the year in the Southern Hemisphere, that's June 21st, to the longest day of the year in the Northern Hemisphere, June 22nd. That's what happened when I landed in Athens, Greece. I was flying through and stopping off in Qatar. That's right, Doha was the name of the city. Qatar's airport was immense. I was shocked at how large it was. It was actually like a little city and quite the commerce capital of the world from my perspective. You could stay there for weeks without going outside if you wanted to. There was just so much going on at any time of the day. I tried to access the airport lounge as I had a long layover. They insisted I couldn't check in to the lounge before my flight or something like that, so I had to shop and come back. And when I did get to the airport lounge, it was delightful, even at 2 a.m. My credit card at the time allowed me to use priority pass lounges and even bring a guest. So I took advantage of that benefit and passed it on to others who became friends along the way. Now back to Greece. So I didn't have a clear plan for what I was going to do in Greece, or Athens even. I stayed at a hostel located in a not so great area of the city. It was a budget hostel. It was on the fringe, and by that, the only stores nearby were small markets that primarily sold takeout groceries. There were really no other stores. There was no dry cleaners or dog grooming shops. Nothing like that in the neighborhood. The residents, you could tell, were mostly short-timers, not people who are planning to stay for very long. Hence, the markets that sold convenience goods, they weren't like 7-Elevens even, or chain stores. And inside each market, they had groceries, but it wasn't really fresh. It wasn't a lot of fresh things. So this was a neighborhood that was an older one, and there were many intersecting streets, like 6 streets all kind of meeting in the middle, and they didn't have well-marked names, so the tourist in me had some trouble. I did have some struggles with Google Maps, but I enjoyed the visit anyway. So after that hostel, the next day I went to an island. It was called Hydra. It starts with an H, spelled Hydra, but it's pronounced Hydra. The locals called Hydra, basically they said it was nearby and they recommended that I go. And then I also went to an island a day later. It was called Naxos. I really enjoyed that visit. I spent time swimming in the ocean, hiking on the shore, and exploring its natural beauty. So I'm going to tell more about this trip in later episodes, so I think you'll enjoy hearing about them. The next day when I returned to Athens, I checked back into the same hostel, more for convenience and budget, and I stayed another night. I did feel a little more secure, but I remember it being so hot that even several stores and shops had closed. I took a taxi to the Acropolis Museum, and I enjoyed the air conditioning inside before I headed back to my hostel. The next day, I took a train to Thessaloniki. It was a 5-hour ride. I stayed there for 2 nights to explore the outskirts of other cities besides Athens and the islands. And I returned to Athens a few days later and visited the Acropolis, the Architectural Museum, as well as several other local places of interest. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about my next stop, which was in Poland. So I flew to Warsaw and then to Krakow by train. And then I spent a couple of nights there. And I returned to Warsaw for another night and Dansk. So then I went to Dansk. These cities, they hold significant historical importance for World War II. So when I arrived at Dansk, I saw the World War II Museum, and I realized it had many artifacts that were displayed for the public. And if you're in Dansk, I recommend this museum. Some of the things I did in Dansk, such as getting a haircut, having a massage, were important for me for self-care. And after Poland, I flew to Finland and then took a ferry to Estonia for a few days. I'm kind of going fast here, so catch with me. I went back to Helsinki and stayed there before going to Stockholm, and then going to Oslo, and then to Bergen, both in Norway, where I stayed a few days. Then I went back to Oslo, and then went to Copenhagen. Are you tracking me here? And then I went to Aarhus, Denmark, and then back to Copenhagen, and then, are you still with me? And then I went to the Netherlands. So in the Netherlands, I had a friend, and his name is Melvin, and he lived in Amsterdam. But I also visited the cities of Haarlem, Rotterdam, and The Hague. So after the Netherlands, I went to Edinburgh, Scotland, took a train that I loved in a little town called North Berwick. I spent a wonderful day exploring, swimming, getting to know the town. And then I left Edinburgh for Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada, and then spent the next 2 weeks in Canada. And I really enjoyed the Eastern Canadian hospitality, the Celtic culture, and the nature I saw throughout the 12 to 1,500 miles that I drove in my rental car. I finished up in Toronto, exploring Niagara Falls, the city, the suburbs, and then I swam several times. And I'm going to talk about that as well on later episodes. So let's move to the next section, which is the smart move and slip up pairing. So I'm going to tell you one of the things I didn't do well. I slipped up in Edinburgh. I dropped my iPad on my tiny toe. It was 5 a.m. and it was dark. I was hurt, but I didn't know how badly. I still don't know if it's broken. I don't think so. But 4 other people were sleeping in my hostel room at the time. I was getting ready to leave for the airport when this happened, and I was trying to be respectful. I did not scream out. I didn't even turn the light on. But 3 weeks later, my toe is still sensitive, and I think it's going to be okay. But here's my lesson. Here's my smart move next time. When you're packing your bags, turn the light on so you can see, so something won't fall on your foot. Okay, now my 60-second confidence challenge. Here's my challenge for you. Get to know the apps on your phone. Download at least 3 travel apps, including Google Maps, Rome to Rio, and another. Now, you might have some other good apps that you'd recommend, so please let me know what they are. You need these to help you navigate your way in a new city or a new country. And always download your city's Google Map while you're in Wi-Fi so that you have it when you're not in a Wi-Fi area. Just download it in advance. And now the resources roundup. One of my favorite apps is called Currency. I can look at the currency of my current location and compare it to another currency, such as the US dollar, or the currency of a destination I may be traveling to. The Currency app is a valuable resource that does not require Wi-Fi to use, and there's no ads. And now here's my takeaway mantra and goodbye. Today's takeaway is not about trying to see everything on your first visit. Save something for later. Be kind to yourself and don't try to overextend. Just do what you can. Thanks for listening and be encouraged to travel with confidence.